God makes all things new. I feel like I should be part of the group up here, sitting right in between all the. Should give me some bongos or a jug or something to join in here. And it's great to be here with you today. What an inspiration to see you here. What an act of faith to be here at this time. I don't know what you feel like, but I feel like all of my life God has been getting me ready for this moment and to lead this great church of faith at this essential time. And I hope that you're praying for the virus that's on the news constantly. You can watch it 24 hours a day if you want to on the news, or you can just read the emails that are sent to you or the Facebook, and everyone's very concerned about it, as we should be. And I know that in my prayers I've been praying for a number of things. One, I pray for every single person that has the virus, and I pray that they can come back and that they can be healed. I pray for our nation that, as some of the scientists predict, that summer could be a time when this is halted. And what a great thing that would be for everyone concerned and for our whole nation, and helping us to get ready to battle illnesses like this. And still at the same time that I'm praying intensely for that, and I'm praying for the staff at Evergreen. That's the place that I often go, and I have so many friends there. I also find humor in this situation, too. It's just maybe my sixth sense of humor that if there was an earthquake, I'd be telling earthquake jokes. I mean, it comes up, but you can't help but laugh at some of the things that take place. I was watching an announcement by the CDC where they had a lady physician that was up there, and she was reading her notes on all the things that you just must not do and the things that you must do. And she was going through, and she had it all typed out so she could get it exactly correct, and she was reading it, and she said one of the things that we keep saying over and over again, you must not touch your hands to your face. Then she got ready to turn her page, and she went like that. That's priceless. I mean, and there's so many funny parts of this whole thing, and opportunities to joke. And you know, we're famous now in Kirkland. All the time when I travel, they know Seattle, Washington, but when you say you're from Kirkland, Washington, they have no idea where you're from. They say, is that near Washington, D.C.? I mean, they just don't have any idea. Now we can travel around the world, and we can say, I'm from Kirkland, Washington. We can reach out our hand and see how they react. But we are number one in the nation, so we might as well enjoy it for that, for one thing. But we're praying that our communities can be strong, even when we don't shake hands, even when some have to stay home, that they won't feel isolated. And it's our job to do that. And I'm praying for the church in general, because this is a season that'll test the church. Whether it's a mega church or a small church, I don't know many churches that can survive very many weeks without church attendance and church giving. I mean, churches aren't made to have that much money stored up. We're in the business of putting the money that we raise in the hands of people that need it to bless them. And so I'm praying that for all the people who are going to Facebook Live and online sermons and all the things that need to take place. And I'm so happy to be in this church with so many determined, faith-filled people to be a blessing during this time of crisis. So today is a great day to be alive. I am talking about party and how on Jesus on life. And one of the things is that life is a party. With Jesus, it was a party. You can be around some people, and whether it's a party or not, whether it's a board meeting or a mission trip or cleaning the space that we're going to worship in, sanitizing it, everything that we do is a party, and that's the way it should be. And so if you have your Bibles, turn with me. Last week we talked about Jesus' statement about why he came to earth, and it was that we might have life and have it more abundantly in John 10:10. There's another passage in John, it's also in Luke, and it's the story about the startling story about the wedding in Cana. So John chapter 2, it didn't make it into the handout, but it's verses 1 through 11, and I'll be reading from the New International Version. This is going to, I want to prepare you, this is going to knock your socks off. This is going to, Cameron thought that was funny, so that's good. That's my one joke for the day. So good to have Cameron back, isn't it? And this is shocking just to think about the way Jesus was, how radical he was, how he still challenges theology and religion and our lives. And he's just the kind of Lord that we want to follow, that you feel inspired every time you read one of his words. And so this is at the beginning of Jesus' life. He's yet to ever do a miracle, which was the signs that pointed to him about who he was, what his identity was, that he had something to teach us. For 30 years of his life, he was such an obedience-type person, which is different from our civilization today. He was such an honoring person of his single mom that was raising him, because most people think that Joseph probably died when Jesus was young, and that he never had ministry for 30 years. He was there doing the carpentry business and helping out the neighbors and loving his mom and taking care of his mom. And so the very first event that takes place after his baptism, which was a shock to his cousin John, who knew from before he was born that Jesus was the Christ. And so when Jesus came up to ask John the Baptist, who was this great celebrity like Billy Graham, he had huge crowds, bigger than Jesus would ever gather together. When he came up and kneeled in the Jordan River and wanted to be baptized, John the Baptist said, "I'm not worthy to even untie your shoes." And Jesus said, "I must do all that is right." Even though he was the Lord and Savior, he was the model for who we were going to be. And so he was baptized, and then he went and practiced disciplines that we still practice today. He fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. I remember people that would say ignorantly that a human being can't fast for 40 days, not knowing the history that Mahatma Gandhi did it during our lifetime, and that a person can fast for 40 days. He fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. As much as people question it, it doesn't change the fact that Jesus Christ did that. And he went into the wilderness, and he was tempted, and his character was made resolute and strong about who he was and what his mission was here on earth. And then he came back, and he attends a wedding. So it's so shocking. And so here it is. On the third day, a wedding took place. I love the way the scriptures write, because it's not a myth. It's not a story that was just to be told. It's saying, since their first day of the week was Sunday, and they're after the Sabbath on Saturday, it's Tuesday. It's saying on Tuesday this happened. It's putting it in real terms. On Tuesday, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Now, weddings were big deals. They're still big deals. If anyone here is the father of the bride, as I have been, you might still be paying for a wedding that took place. And it was only one day. And in many cultures, it's like the biggest thing of their life. And I remember one of my students, when I was teaching a class for Fuller, he was never married, and I asked him why, and he said, "I have to give several cows to the father of the girl that I love in Kenya." And so I said, "Well, I'll buy one." I had no idea how much a cow cost. They're expensive, even in Kenya. And other professors and other people donated cows so that he could get married, and he's happily married today, and he's a pastor in the Rainier Valley. And it's expensive. It's huge to have a wedding in many, many cultures today, even in our culture. If you're going to be the father of a bride, let me warn you, it's expensive. I remember when our daughter Elise was married, and I thought we'd just have some little thing that would take place that wouldn't cost any money. And when she came to me and said, "Dad, I've been raised in simplicity. I just want a really simple wedding." And so she was going to graduate school as Ray was. They fell in love. They were coming back here to get married. Jackie was doing all the planning for the wedding. We're going to have the dinner in the barn. That was where a lot of us had celebrated the weddings. And when she came back, it was like all the plans changed. And if you're the father-in-law, your one job is to say, right? But there's many tones of that when you find out the cost. Like, So if you're the father of the bride, or potentially the father of the bride, weddings are a huge investment. But in Jewish culture in the first century, it was a week of festivities. I have no idea about that kind of a wedding. I know that I attended a Spanish wedding from a couple in our church, and they said, when you come back, don't plan to just be here for 3 hours or 4 hours or 5 hours. You come and plan on staying at our house. This is going to last a week long. Where you just take the week off and you just celebrate and party and have fun. And I thought, what a great tradition to not be the father-in-law of or the father of the bride. But it's because it's a major event. So this is a major event in the first century, a week long of celebrations. And it's in Galilee, which is like Palm Springs or something. There's palm trees, and there's beautiful water there from the Sea of Galilee, and the water's fresh coming off of Mount Hermon, and it's just a beautiful place to be. They're at this place of vacations. If you can go and spend a week there, you're really fortunate. And Jesus' mother was there. And Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. Now that's outstanding, because a lot of times Christians aren't invited to the party. It's because we become so Christian, we become so moving with the cause. We can say the critical word at the critical time, because that's an infinite set, that we don't get invited to the party anymore after we become a Christian many times. Those of you that do, you have a spiritual gift, being invited to the party. That's one of the spiritual gifts. And Jesus was the one that got invited to the party. They wanted him to be there, wanted his disciples to be there. And it says, when the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, they have no more wine. Now, at a party today, if the wine's gone, that might be a problem. But in that day, it was much more, because that was the drinking. That's what you drank, because the water wasn't good to drink. And so people drank wine to touch their thirst. And they're all out of wine. This is going to be an embarrassing situation for the families. And they go, and the mother hears about it, and Mary's so sensitive that she intervenes. And it says, and Jesus says, go and check with Jesus. And he says, dear woman, why do you involve me? Now that's as harsh of a rebuke that Jesus would ever come up with. He calls his mother woman. And if you're a mother and your kids start calling you woman, you know you've got an issue. There's a little bit of context there, right? And so Jesus says, dear woman, why do you involve me? In other words, you know who I am. You know what I'm all about. Do you think the first miracle that I ever conduct is going to not be for those that are starving, or not going to be to feed 5,000 or to heal someone who's at death's door? You think it's to create more wine? And he says, my time has not come. This isn't time for me to emerge with my miracles. So this shows us something about God, that his agenda changes, and it matches with what we hear about God and about prayer, is that the prayer of a righteous man availeth much, is what they say, talking about Elijah. In other words, the people of God that love him, that serve him, that are part of his cause, God has this compassion for them, that when people like you hit their knees and pray for someone who has the coronavirus, and they're fighting this infection, it has a powerful result. So it's not in Jesus' agenda to already have a miracle, and Jesus is not maybe the first miracle that he wants to have, but Mary comes to him and says, do it. Do what Jesus says. Do it for me. Do it for the family. And Jesus is compelled by that and moved by that. And he's moved by our prayers. Yeah, there's a lot of important things taking place as we battle this virus, because it's impacting our stock market, right? It's impacting people's lives, and people are having to be isolated, and there's all kinds of things that could run the day, but we've forgotten the power of prayer. We're going to need to be a praying church. And as someone who's battled infections before, and I got my infections from visiting people with infections, and I usually come down with them right after I visit a person with an infection, I know the power of antibiotics. I'm so thankful for antibiotics. But I can tell you that there's a power of prayer that's more powerful than the power of antibiotics. And I've had many close calls. I remember the time when Jackie and I went to the hospital, and they sounded the alarm when we were in the emergency room that someone was septic with their infection. And so when the doctor came in, I said, I heard the alarm. I said, I'm a pastor. I need to go to that person and pray for them. And the doctor said, you don't have to get up. And I said, why? And he said, because you're that person. You can pray right here in this. And I don't know how many times the power of prayer has just defied what people think they know, and it becomes a force. Now, I don't know how that works exactly, but it works. Maybe there's science to it that when a person feels that loved, they get better. Maybe God knew he was talking about that way. I don't know. It's a mystery when it comes to miracles. We can't explain them, or it's not a miracle. And I know for me, a recent miracle that took place and my comeback that's going to take place. When you see me walk down here and do cartwheels and dance and break dance before you, isn't that going to be a miracle? And my swelling wouldn't go down because I have a thing after having 7 infections in my leg called venous insufficiency syndrome, where the blood flow and the other things that take place are shut down. It's like shutting I-5 down to a 2-lane road. And so this leg was 4 times the size of this leg. I couldn't hardly get my shoe on a couple weeks ago. And the doctors knew that I had this and that this is to be expected, but that doesn't make it any easier. But one Wednesday, I woke up and my leg was normal. I thought I was seeing things. And when we talked to the surgeon, he said, I don't know how to explain that. And I started thinking, it's got to be due to the power of prayer. Someone was praying for me. And when you're battling an infection, there's nothing like the power of prayer. Those of you that had infections before know exactly what I'm talking about. This is a season of prayer. And Mary goes to Jesus. She knows who he is. She says, listen to him. Do what he says. And do whatever else he tells you, she says. And nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Now notice the detail in the scriptures, how it tells us about the jars. I don't know how many times I've heard someone preach about how they just took the water and they poured it in the empty wine crates, and it kind of assumed the wine that was in the crate and became the best wine. Wrong. These are cleansing water, stone. They don't have wine in their fiber around them. And yet it becomes the best wine. How that happens, I don't know. It's not for me to know. It's for me to enjoy. That Jesus answers prayer. And so it tells the details about that. And he says, draw some out and take it to the father of the bride, I think, is probably the master of the banquet, and see how he likes this. And he says, you have the best wine you saved for the end. No one does that. And it's a miracle. What a miracle. I mean, I took a vow like John the Baptist. John the Baptist never took wine. He never took alcohol in his life. I took that vow when I was a very young man. I haven't ever done that. That's maybe why I'm not the life of the party. But Jesus did take wine. He was the life of the party. And he was concerned about this issue. And he actually worked a miracle. Because, as we'll learn even last week, is life is supposed to be a party. When Jesus talks about the kingdom of heaven, which starts now, we'll talk about next week, he talks about a feast, a party. In other words, when someone comes to Christ, it's not because they're giving up the party, it's they're joining the party, the real party that we're all searching for, the real party that people take illicit drugs for that destroy their life so they can enjoy the party, and they miss out that Jesus is the life of the party. I love teenage coming-of-age movies. They're just really funny to me. And a couple of them, there's people chasing around because of the plot behind a rock concert. And I remember one in particular, I can't cite the movie, where the star pops up and it says moments of 2 seconds of fame. There he is before thousands of young people there for a rock and roll concert. And he knows what to say. Are you guys ready for a party? And everyone says, yeah, they start going crazy. So if you ever have to speak for a rock concert, that's the phrase you say. Are you guys ready for a party? Because every young person wants a party, right? Every kid wants a party. One time my kids have been sick, my grandkids have been sick for a long time. And I said, I'm taking you out to dinner and we're going to have a party. And they said, what for? And so I took Becca and Ben and their kids and Jackie and I went to a party. And I said, it's a birthday party. And they said, who's it for? And I said, for nobody. And so we sang happy birthday to nobody and we had a big party. And my grandkids will always remember that. Why? Because little children, they are the party. I want to say that with a lot of authoritative strength because Jackie and I watched our 4-year-old and 6-year-old grandchildren all week long. And as Jackie said, it was the hardest week of our lives and the best week of our lives. Because they're like puppy dogs. Every day is a party. When they wake up, they can't wag their tails, but they should. They're just full of joy. They're full of happiness. They love to be at Grandpa and Grandma's house. And they're made for a party. That's why Jesus said, suffer little children to come unto me and forbid them not, for such is the kingdom of heaven. We were made to have a party. And if we get anything from this series that I think was inspired by God about Jesus on life, it's that we commit ourselves to be party people, to have a smile on our face. Not that we're going through life in some funeral dirge and it's everything just sad and miserable and we're at a defeat all the time. No. We have a smile on our face and a twinkle in our eye, like many of you do, and we're ready to enjoy life and to trust God. And so life becomes a party. So every board meeting should become a party, right? Every mission trip should be a party. Whoa, we've had a lot of fun on mission trips. I remember the mission trip to Honduras where it happened to be April Fool's and Jackie put a piranha-like fish in everyone's toilet to celebrate the holiday. And we had a huge water fight there. I showed up, not knowing there was a water fight, and they had a big bucket of water, and everyone ran at me with buckets of water and just sopped me, even though I looked so distinguished at that moment. Then I was extinguished after that. Every mission trip should be a party. Every cleaning time should be a party. Every men's Bible study should be a party. Every women's Bible study is probably already a party, knowing the women of our church. Life should be a party with Jesus. And he says so much about, why do you worry about this? Why do you worry about tomorrow? Look at the birds. They don't worry about tomorrow. Jesus came that we might have life and we might have it in all of its abundance. When I was coming to the service Saturday night, I looked in the mirror before I went to church, and I was coming about 45 minutes early, and I looked like Bozo the Clown. I hadn't had my hair cut for a while. I'd been busy, and that's my signal. It's time for a haircut when your hair's going like that, like Bozo, and your beard's going like that, and it's all orange. No, it wasn't orange. But I stopped by the barbershop to get my hair cut, and so I zoomed by the barbershop, didn't look too busy. I came in. I've told you about this barber before. His name's Tony. He's the best one there. He has the longest line. And there wasn't many people there, and they said, well, it's about a half an hour wait. And I said, I have to be to church in 15 minutes, so I can be 15 minutes early. And Tony said, Pastor Tim, how are you doing? I'll work you in. You're the next person up. But I've got to talk to you. And I said, Tony, I've got to be to church in 15 minutes. He said, no, if you want a haircut, you have to talk to me. So I came over, and I ended up being about 2 minutes late for church, but they started without me, so it was great. But he told me the story. Now, this is the guy that I told you a couple years ago at Easter that when I came into the barbershop to get a haircut, I said, what are you doing this next week? And I said, I'm preaching the good news of Jesus Christ. And he said, oh, I need to hear the good news. I've never been a Christian. I know I've needed it since I was in Vietnam. And I think you're supposed to share it with me. I said, well, come to church. He came to church. It was the easiest person I've ever led to Christ. He came to church. That was like on a Friday or something. He came to church on Sunday. He sat right over there by where Jim's sitting, and he came forward. I prayed a prayer with him, and he accepted Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. And he had his wife and his little baby with him. And then he was baptized. He's really committed to the Vietnamese community, so he goes to a church up in Linwood. That's a Vietnamese church. He loves the church. He shows me pictures all the time of his son going to Sunday school and the baptism of his whole family there. And so he said, I need to talk to you. And I said, well, why do you need to talk to me? And he said, the Lord put a vision of you in my mind. this last week, and I knew I was supposed to talk to you this week, so it's strange that you had come into the barber shop. And I said, okay, talk. And so he told me again the story, this time much more hesitantly, slowly, with emotion. And I was noticing the slowly part. And he said, you know, when I told you the story about how in Vietnam I knew I needed to become a Christian, I needed to come to America and follow Jesus Christ? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, I never told you the details of that. And I saw you in a walker a couple weeks ago, and God spoke to me and said, you need to tell this to Pastor Tim. So he told me about a bar fight that he was involved in. He said, I was a Buddhist, I didn't believe in Christ, I didn't even know anything about Christianity or Christ. But in this bar fight, he said, I was drunk, and someone stabbed me in the back, and I almost died. And as I fell down on the floor, realizing I had been stabbed, he said, I had a picture of someone telling me that I needed to come to America and find Jesus Christ and turn my life over to Jesus Christ. And I said, yeah, I remember you saying that. He said, what I didn't tell you, and he's very embarrassed. The whole barbershop's listening by now. So what I didn't tell you is before I ever met you, you were the person that came to me in a vision and told me I needed to find Jesus Christ. Now, I have no idea how that works. It's greater than the Force. I don't even know if maybe he associated me with that picture. I don't know. I tend to get psychological about things like that. But maybe it was the fact that that day getting ready for Easter, I had a smile on my face and a twinkle in my eye, just like you. And when I walked out of there, just touched by his emotion in sharing that with me, I thought, God, I'm so thankful that day I had twinkles in my eyes and a smile on my face, and life was a party as we're heading into Easter. No one's going to want to join the cause of Christ unless we live like Christ. And for Jesus, life was a party. Jackie's going to come and lead us in a closing prayer.